It was February 1946, and a quiet lover's lane sat just outside the city limits, where young couples escaped the watchful eyes of their families. The trees whispered with the wind, and the gravel road stretched into darkness. No streetlights. No witnesses. Just the faint glow of headlights, and something else lurking beyond them. A car door creaks open. Footsteps approach. Then a voice cuts through the silence, low and commanding. What happened next would ignite one of America's most chilling unsolved mysteries, a series of brutal attacks that turned a peaceful town into a place of fear. They would call him the Phantom Killer. And for months, no one was safe. The city of Texarkana sits on the border of Texas and Arkansas, a place where two states blend into one community. In 1946, it was a quiet, post-war town. Soldiers had returned home. Families were rebuilding their lives. Teenagers were falling in love, sneaking out to dance halls, and driving down lonely roads for privacy. It was the kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. Until it did. On the night of February 22, 1946, a young couple named Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry parked their car on a secluded road known as Richmond Road. It was a popular spot for couples, far enough away from town to feel private. But that night, privacy turned into terror. Out of the darkness, a man approached their car. He wore a white cloth mask, covering his face like a ghost. In his hand was a gun. He ordered Jimmy out of the car. What followed was a violent assault. Jimmy was beaten so badly that his skull was fractured. Mary Jean was forced into the woods, where she was attacked and left traumatized but alive. Miraculously, both survived. But their attacker vanished into the night. Police initially believed it was an isolated incident, a random act of violence. But they were wrong. The Phantom Killer was just getting started. Less than a month later, on March 24, 1946, another couple drove out to a quiet lover's lane. Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore. The next morning, their bodies were found in their car. Both had been shot at close range. There were no signs of a struggle. No witnesses. No clear motive. Just silence, and fear beginning to spread through Texarkana. Now, people started to connect the dots. The masked attacker. The lovers' lanes. The brutality. Something was happening in their town, and no one knew how to stop it. By April, the fear had turned into panic. On April 13, 1946, another couple was attacked. Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker had spent the evening at a nightclub before driving out into the night. Hours later, their bodies were discovered along a lonely road. Paul had been shot multiple times. Betty Jo's body was found nearly 2 miles away. It was a horrifying escalation. This wasn't just an attacker anymore. This was a hunter. The newspapers began to give him a name. The Phantom Killer. A figure who struck under the cover of darkness, targeting young couples, leaving no trace behind. And still, no one had seen his face. The final known attack came on May 3, 1946. But this time, the victim wasn't a couple on a lover's lane. It was a woman in her own home. Virgil Starks and his wife, Katie Starks, were relaxing in their farmhouse when gunfire shattered the night. Virgil was killed instantly, shot through a window. Katie was shot twice but somehow managed to escape and call for help. The Phantom Killer had changed his pattern. Now, nowhere felt safe. Not even your own home. The investigation that followed was massive. Police from both Texas and Arkansas worked together. The FBI became involved. Hundreds of suspects were questioned. Tips flooded in from across the country. But the phantom killer remained a ghost. No fingerprints. No reliable eyewitness descriptions. No clear motive. The case grew colder with each passing day. Now, if you're enjoying this deep dive into one of America's most haunting mysteries, take a second to like this video, subscribe to Shadow Files, and share it with someone who loves true crime as much as you do. Because stories like this, they deserve to be remembered. As investigators dug deeper, strange clues began to surface. The attacker seemed to have knowledge of the area. He struck in isolated locations, often under the cover of darkness, suggesting careful planning. Some survivors described him as wearing a white mask with eye holes cut out, almost like a sack. Others said his voice was calm, controlled, even polite at times. There was also the question of his weapon. Ballistics reports suggested the same gun may have been used in multiple attacks, but inconsistencies made it difficult to confirm. And then there was the timing. The attacks all occurred within a short span of weeks, and then suddenly stopped. As if the killer had simply disappeared. Or decided he was done. One of the most discussed suspects in the case was a man named Youell Swinney, a career criminal with a long history of theft and suspicious behavior. His own wife claimed he was responsible for the murders. She told police that Swinney had confessed to her, describing details that hadn't been made public. But there was a problem. Her testimony couldn't be used in court due to legal protections between spouses. Without physical evidence, police couldn't charge him for the murders. Swinney was eventually arrested for car theft and sent to prison, but the phantom killer case remained unsolved. Was he the man behind the mask? Or just another dead end in a growing list of suspects? The theories surrounding the Texarkana Moonlight Murders are as chilling as the crimes themselves. The first theory is the most straightforward. A lone serial killer. Someone who targeted couples out of jealousy, rage, or a desire for control. His knowledge of the area and ability to evade capture suggest he may have lived nearby, blending into the community. The second theory points directly at Youell Swinney. His wife's statements, combined with his criminal background, make him a compelling suspect. Some investigators believe he was responsible for all the attacks. But without concrete evidence, the case against him remains circumstantial. The third theory is more unsettling. What if there was more than one attacker? The differences in the crime scenes, the escalation in violence, and the shift in victim profiles could suggest multiple individuals working independently, or even together. A terrifying thought. And then there's the final theory. The one that lingers in the shadows. Some locals believe the phantom killer wasn't just a man, but something else entirely. A presence that appeared suddenly, brought fear to an entire town, and then vanished without a trace. A phantom in every sense of the word. While this theory leans into the paranormal, it speaks to the fear that gripped Texarkana during those months. Because when there are no answers, the mind begins to fill in the blanks. Even decades later, the Texarkana Moonlight Murders remain unsolved. The case has inspired films, books, and countless discussions among true crime enthusiasts. But the truth remains buried somewhere in the past. The roads where the attacks took place still exist. The town still stands. But the fear, that has never completely faded. Some say that on quiet nights, when the wind moves through the trees just right, you can almost feel it. A presence. A memory of something that once walked those roads. Watching. Waiting. So what really happened in Texarkana in 1946? Was it the work of a single, calculating killer? A man who slipped through the cracks of justice? Or something far more mysterious? The truth is, we may never know. And maybe that's what makes this case so haunting. Because sometimes, the scariest stories aren't the ones with monsters. They're the ones with no ending. If this story sent chills down your spine, make sure to like, subscribe to Shadow Files, and share this video with your friends. And tell me in the comments, who do you think the Phantom Killer really was? Because your theory might be closer to the truth than you think.